What's up, everybody? You're listening to the Team Illinois podcast, the official podcast for the Illinois Assemblies of God. And on this podcast, you'll be able to listen to conversations with leaders from across our state, as well as messages from our events such as District Council, Connected Conference, Momentum Youth Convention, all those things. And in today's episode, we have our very first conversation with one of our leaders. Today, we'll be talking with Pastor Keith Brown. He's a youth pastor on the Southside of Chicago at Stratford Christian Center. And in today's discussion, we talk about everything from youth ministry to serving in the city to how to love unlovable people. And toward the end of the conversation, we even go into how Pastor Keith came to know Christ as his Lord and Savior. I believe that no matter what kind of ministry you're doing, no matter what context you're in, whether you're in the city or in the country, you will benefit from listening to this episode and gaining the wisdom that Pastor Keith has to offer based off everything that God has taught him and all the things that he's experienced. So without any further ado, here's my conversation with Pastor Keith Brown.
As you can see, I'm really nervous.
Yeah.
Is it showing?
We're both recording right now, so
Okay.
I don't think anybody can see or hear your nervousness, so I think
Good.
we're good. But, it's just, you're not doing, this isn't like preaching, like, do you get nervous when you preach?
Always.
Always, every single time.
Every time I do anything.
And how long have you been
I
doing
think
ministry?
I've been doing ministry for 17 years.
Mm-hmm.
I think the nervousness is about making sure that the big point is made.
Yeah.
It's not about the ability or the talent to do it. It's about, Lord, are you saying through me what you want your people to hear?
Right. So it's different than stage fright.
Right.
Because stage fright has nothing to do with that. Stage fright's all about you,
Mm-hmm.
but now you're worried about the effect of the Holy Spirit and the work of God on the audience's lives at that
Absolutely.
point. Okay, so that's what the fear is now.
And see, like what you're doing right now,
Mhm.
the magic is happening because we're talking, we're just kind of shooting the breeze,
Mhm.
and I'm warming up and I'm relaxing. So
Right.
you're a genius, man.
Nailed it. So for the people who don't know you, they've never met you
Mhm.
at a camp or Connected Conference or any of our events. Tell us who you are, where you're from, and what you're doing right now.
Well, my name is Keith Brown, and I serve in Chicago at our church, Stratford Christian Center Church. My lead pastor is Odell Townsend, and I am just a simple servant of the Lord. I'm a husband, father of 4 beautiful children, and right now I'm serving in the capacity as a youth pastor / worship leader. So, that whole area there, wearing a lot of hats.
Right.
But I love what I'm doing. I love the place that God has me right now.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
you've been serving, have you been serving here that entire 10 years, 17 years?
Yeah, so it's amazing. Always been a part of the ministry, but I was one of those, Zach, that, worked a lot and just was kind of doing things as the opportunities opened up.
Mhm.
Wasn't really, hadn't really dove into ministry. And some circumstances happened in life with jobs and becoming separated from a big-time employment and walking by faith. And then I began to discover what that call was. So a lifelong history of ministry, maybe the last 7 to 10 years being full-time and really investigating what the call of God is on my life. Yeah.
Wow, that's cool. So today I wanted to talk to you about youth ministry particularly. Because you have helped me in that area personally. I've served never as a youth pastor, but as different youth volunteer, youth
Right.
leader scenarios. And I remember there was this one time in my life where I was dealing with a particularly difficult group of kids,
Mhm.
kids that were from a rougher part of town. And these were the kind of kids that would just assume get in a fight and argue with you, then sit down, shut up, and listen to you preach.
Right.
So, I turned to you for
Mhm.
some guidance, and your first word of advice was, well, bring them up here and I'll set them up straight myself.
Yeah.
So I wanted to kind of talk to you and share this conversation that we have to everyone in Team Illinois, just talking about youth ministry, the lessons you've learned along the way, and practically how to deal with teenagers and be that kind of spiritual figure in their life.
Sure.
So what's the kind of the first thing, like if there was one piece of advice that you would give to someone who was fresh out of Bible college, they know they want to go in the youth ministry, at least for a little bit or maybe even long term, what would you say to that person?
Yeah, man, I think that's a great question. Thanks. I think the first thing is obviously getting that leading, that Holy Spirit leading and equipping. And after those two things are set aside in your life, I think the next biggest thing is signing up for the long haul, consistency. I think we live in an environment, at least here on the Southside of Chicago, where our kids see a lot of people one day in their life and then the next month they're gone.
Right.
And so kids never get to see a consistent figure of someone staying with me from, point A to point Z. And I think if you're able to set aside in your mind and say, hey, I'm going to devote my life or a period in my life, or at least 5 to 6 years, where I can at least see a kid get out of one age class into the next age class. And I think that that's where we see our biggest bang in terms of development, discipleship, and them becoming or learning who God has really called them to be. So I think that that's the first step, really going after that consistency. Kids seeing enough of I'm here one day and then I'm gone the next.
Right.
Unfortunately, in our parents and the lives of their parents and their environment that they come from, it's a lot of up and down, in and out. But you think about how consistent the Lord is for us.
Right.
Every day we got air. That's consistency, bro. We got
never
sun.
have to worry about it.
Yeah. We got sunshine. Whether it's a cloudy day, the sun is up there.
Right.
He is consistent,
Uh-huh.
And so if I can take that same scope of that and provide some consistency for our youth, I think we win.
No, absolutely.
We definitely win.
So the biggest area of inconsistency that they have is authority figures and parents. And you as their youth pastor, you're the most present, always available person in their life oftentimes, right?
Absolutely. I think we talked a little bit about that at lunch. Sometimes as youth leaders, we take offense to how we're going after a kid or we're going after a group and we're trying to be there and for whatever reason, they disconnect from us. But they're always expecting us to be right within eye shot or earshot of them. And it's that one moment when they pick up the phone and reach out, even though the fact that they've been gone for 3 weeks and you haven't seen them, but it's that one time they pick up the phone and they're looking for Pastor Keith or Pastor Zach or whomever.
Right.
And they pick up the phone and say, you know what? You were there. Even though I didn't come to youth group 6 weeks, but I called you that one day and you picked up the phone. And that's the consistency I think we're missing, but God is helping us to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you're not perfect at this. You're still learning it.
Man, no, I'm gonna tell you, it's not a thing of walking in perfection. It's a thing of just admitting and saying, Lord, here's my heart. Here's how I want to serve, and help me to be better in the places that I'm weak at. Yeah.
That's cool. So particularly, my memory of you was dealing with the students in my context that were hard to reach. For the youth pastor out there that has
Sound like you had some hellions.
Yeah. For the youth pastors out there that, whether it's a group of them
Right.
or it's that one kid in the back that's always causing trouble, how do you love those students that are hard to love? How do you go about that?
Yeah, it's just what you said, man. It's just the love. That's all it really is. There is some type of context. There is some type of stream of conversation, and the Holy Spirit knows how to reach us all. It's putting the demand on the Holy Spirit to say, hey, Lord, what are we doing in this child's life? And whatever you say to me, I'm going to trust and believe that is the thing that child needs. And so, not being surprised by anything that they say. You have to take the shock value out. Kids come out of a bag and it's like, did he really just say that to me?
Right.
And so getting over that and knowing where they're coming from, obviously when you deal with unbelievers, you deal with their fallenness.
Right.
And so everything that comes with that, I think the church sometimes is too surprised as it relates to how unbelievers act.
Right.
Well, they're unfallen. We were all unfallen. And so taking away some of the shock value, asking the Lord, how am I reaching this person? What is it that we're doing to minister to this person? And then I think the thing that you said was just plain old love. Love is patient, love is kind, and having everyone on your team to understand, hey, we got a little one here, we got a situation in this person that they tend to do A, B, C, and D from time to time, but this is how we got to, go about reaching them. And so all of those little things work together for the bigger goal.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you find balance between showing grace to someone who is fallen and is not acting like the church kids in your youth group? Because this is a problem that I've heard from youth pastors is they have their raised in church kids in their youth group, and then they will try to reach out and bring in some unchurched kids, and then the rest of the church freaks out. It's like, why do we have those kids hanging out with
absolutely
our kids? And there has to be this balanced approach of showing grace, but also tough love. How do you walk that balance?
Yeah, let me tell you, and thanks for that question again. We had a similar situation at our church congregation. We bust out and reached out to some kids that were, like you say, that didn't have the history.
Right.
Boy, did that create a mixture, because now you got the house kids that have always been groomed in a certain way. They know the lingo, the language. And then you got a certain other groups of kids that are just like, I don't know what to do. Why is choir singing? Why are they jumping up and down? I'm familiar. This is weird. Yeah. And so the balance is just really having those discussions with your lead pastor, those that help make those decisions so that they can help flow down the vision. It really shows us, it's really a good picture of where our churches are when we have those situations. And I think God is desperately moving us from the country club type of mentality into a kingdom type of mentality. But having those conversations with those key leaders so they can kind of help flow down, hey, this is what's happening.
Right.
We're not doing church as usual. And so helping prepare people for what's coming in. We would be surprised. We would be surprised how the church would respond if a certain street in your block just emptied up and came into your church.
Right.
How would your congregation, are they really, really ready?
Right.
I'm praying that they are. And so just having those good conversations and using your leadership to kind of help you flow down and drill down what it is, the new thing that God is doing, and trying to help it palatable for everyone, That's what I would say.
So when you start having those rough around the edges situations, those people, and if you have a parent that's freaking out, really reach out to your senior pastor and say, hey, we're reaching out to these kids. Let's help us communicate with the parents, saying, hey, you know what, everything's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And so all of that's important. We can't do it all. That's why we're a body. If there's something that I'm lacking in, hey, taking a partner here to kind of help level the playing field. You're going to have that when you're dealing with people.
Right.
But God is so awesome that he helps us to navigate if we use our leadership correctly.
Sure. Mm-hmm. So where does tough love come in, though? That's a phrase that I've heard you use.
It's a good question.
You have grace, for those kids that are causing trouble or saying certain things or acting a certain way, but then where does some tough love, like, okay, we got to have standards, where does that come in? How do you ride that?
I don't know. You help me, Zach. Here's why I say that, because I've been doing my own little experiment, and what I've found, I'm not going to use the word millennials. I'll just say the emerging generation, because they are emerging.
Like Generation Z.
Yeah, the Generation Z that's coming up. They don't seem to like, this is kind of weird to me. This is what I've noticed. I don't know if you've seen this. They don't like structure. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, they don't like rules, but they like structure. Yeah. And that's kind of
how would you define
a weird
the difference
thing to
between
me.
Rules and structure?
Well, I think rules are, hey, don't do this, or you got to do this to complete this, or get over here. And I think structure is more like, okay, here's a plan from how we move to one thing to the next thing. It's organized. Mm-hmm. It has a flow to it. And so what I've noticed with the tough love thing, and when you're when you're bringing someone along, you have got to put yourself in a position to remember what God has brought you from and be able to articulate those weaknesses or those growth opportunities in a way that doesn't seem like it's condemning or being brought down. You know, Jesus, everywhere he went, he spoke the truth in love.
Yep.
You know, he gave truth, but there was a bag full of love that he had with it. And I think that when we approach children or teens or youth, and we're just giving them the law,
Right.
the law, and then there's no 20-pound bag of love or 50-pound bag of love that balances that out, I think we lose them.
Right.
And once they know that, hey, not only did Pastor Keith or Zach or whoever come to me with something and challenge me with something right, but I feel a connection in how it was done. And now I know that they're on my team and they're going to help me get better. Once we move into that position, I think we win.
Right.
I think we win. It's just so, it's the perfect balance of, hey, I got my 20, 50-pound sack of love here, and I got some correction here for you that I'm going to give you, and I'm going to sweeten it up and balance it out to get the effect. you know?
Right. So what does love look like to the generation that you're trying to reach? You know, how do they receive love?
Yeah, I know that love nowadays is, it appears to be in the form of a lot of complimentary efforts.
Words of affirmation.
Yeah, words of affirmation. A lot of you're doing great, super, keep it up. And then a lot of times love is basically, I think the first thing we talked about is that being consistent. You know, that's love. You know, this generation will never respond to you the way someone else would respond with a text. They may not hit you right back, but that doesn't mean that they're not receiving or hearing what it is that you're saying.
Right.
And just once again, that consistency thing and understanding their speak, you know, what their language is. I think, you know, that's how we can continue to show love in that way.
Sure. So just showing up where they're at and meeting them where they are.
Showing up where they're at, meeting them where they are, those words of affirmation. And I think sometimes that tough love thing that we talked about, that shows, you know, sometimes kids are just acting out because, you know, I'm not getting any attention.
Right.
You know, and I just,
no one's ever told them no.
No one's ever told right. And so sometimes correction can be the biggest hug you can give a kid, you know, and love and arms around them can be the biggest love you can give a child. Yeah.
That's cool. So a struggle that I imagine that you've dealt with along with other youth pastors in our state or our country for that matter is you're trying to instill certain values and teachings to a group of students, but they get none of that at home.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's a completely non-Christian home or even if it is a little bit of a Christian presence, it's not a corrective teaching, leading presence in their home. When you're trying to make an impact on these kids' lives and home is either passive or against what you're doing, you know, how do you work with the home lives of the students that you're trying to reach?
Yeah, man. I tell my team all the time, let's just forget about home right now, in the sense of we're not going to get the support from there. And what we're seeing in some parts of the city is, you know, absentee parents. And so right now, guys, we're not going to get the support from there. Let's just throw it out the window. It's not there.
Like, don't even worry
about it. It's not there. And putting the emphasis on what the gospel does. I am just a firm believer in the power of the gospel. Once a child receives that message and it gets down in their heart and down in their little spirit and they begin to act it out and live it out, that's where the change agent starts. And sometimes where we may not see the support from home or disciplinary things or changes from the parents, instilling in them a sense of right and wrong, we got to put the emphasis on the power of the gospel. And that is where, in reverse, you know, they get, can I use this word? They get infected or they get influenced with the gospel. And it's down in their heart and they go home and they that light begins to shine in dark places in that home. We've seen that happen several times where we were able to serve sideways into a child's life, from their life into some parents' lives, based off of the activity that the new activity that the child was making. Parents begin to call and say, hey, something's happening with my kid.
Right.
And guess what? They want to find out, what is this thing?
Right.
And so you go from an unengaged parent to a parent that's saying, man, I need to find out what's going on down at that church, because Johnny or Susie is doing some different stuff now. And that's what happens when we put the priority on the gospel.
Right.
We may not see it at home right away, but the gospel, it is the power of Christ unto salvation. It is our best weapon. And once we can commit to getting that in the lives of a child and getting them to walking that out and become sticky with that, with the gospel with them, then they take that stuff home with them, man. And it may not come out all at once, but sooner or later, little hints of things come out.
Yep.
And, it's true. Little children is going to lead us. It says the little child shall lead us. And so I've seen that happen that way.
Yeah.
So, yeah, my biggest reply to youth leaders or youth pastors or teams is, hey, you may not be getting it right now. Don't even look for it from the home. I'm sorry to say that, but just don't even look for it right now.
Like, worry about what you can do.
Yeah, just worry about what you can do and watch the power of the gospel. Watch what the gospel does.
That's really cool. What have been some of your favorite moments in youth ministry,
Yeah.
just off the top of your head, whether it be a funny moment or just one of those crazy, wow, this is how God moved moment,
Yeah.
What comes to mind?
No, I just love seeing kids turn around. I think one of the things I love often is when we bus up for summer, and kids are in their little cliques, they have their groups, and we go to camp breakaway, and it's a situation where it's kids of all different groups, and we come out of our shells from our ethnicity and from our streams of life.
Sure.
And we get into this bigger pond, this bigger ocean,
Right.
And you see
hang out with all these country kids in Carlinville.
or you see other kids that don't look like you, and they have different experiences. And to see Monday to Friday,
Right.
and then you see how those walls of differences or those walls of different behaviors or lifestyles become broken down. And I think that's the magic of the love of the kingdom, man.
Yeah.
And that's the power of the kingdom. And that is always an ongoing. Every time I go to camp and I observe, I'm watching that.
Yeah.
I'm watching some of the coldest kids in terms of attitude, or some of the kids that don't have too much conversation. And I'm looking at, now they're swimming in a bigger ocean. And, love is a good muscle. Love is an easy muscle. It's something that we don't have to be taught to do.
Right.
Love can be really easy if we allow it. I think hate is something that we're taught to do, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm seeing kids change from Monday to Friday. And then on the bus ride home, kids are all crying, oh, I want to go. I met this guy, or I met this person, and they're so cool.
Yeah.
And then what I'm seeing here is our kids actually keep in contact with each other, through the year,
Right.
social media, texting. And so those
Snapchat.
Snapchat. And those relationships are built. And so I think that's the greatest thing that I marvel at every time I'm in that situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you really see the effect of our camps on your students.
Definitely.
Yeah. How do you keep that fire going? Like they get all passionate for God at Lake Williamson, and then they come back.
The
they
sizzle
come back to the
fizzles.
city. Yeah. How do you keep that fire going?
Yeah. It's basically those testimonial things, and it's casting the vision, over and over again, letting them know, hey, this is the fire that is burning in you. We do several of those, trying to plug them into different opportunities where they can walk out what it is that they learn and then discuss, later. So, yeah, all of those little things kind of help keep the ball rolling.
Right.
Those prayer times, those altar times. So, yeah, I like what they said. One of the things, I don't know if it was Pastor Joy or Pastor Chris, or even Pastor Eric, they mentioned about taking camp past the T-shirt.
Yep.
Let's just not make it a T-shirt, and so, doing those things. That mindset is so huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What does your Wednesday night look like? Like when kids show up to your church, what happens? What do you do with them? Like, because everyone's service, like, there's kind of like the template, it's like 3 songs, a game, and a sermon. But I'm just curious to see, like, how do you do youth ministry here in the Southside of Chicago?
Yeah, so our youth ministry is set up a little different, a lot different. We do ours on Sundays, Sunday midday. So we worship. We do a corporate worship.
Yeah.
Where we worship with your mom and your family, uncles and aunties, and those that make up the body. And then the teens are excused, where we have a dialogue, where we have a topic. So urban city Chicago, we just don't dive right into the word right away.
Right.
We dive into some social and emotional things. A lot of the kids are dealing with some things, and so what's happening in the news,
right?
What's
so you talk about current events.
Current events. How is that affecting you?
Right.
And then some kids are so involved in that they can't hear the gospel right away. And so then the challenge is, okay, so if you're called to be a Christian and you're called to be a believer, then what is your faith saying to you about this social issue that's going on in your neighborhood?
Right.
And how can you balance it with the word?
Yeah.
So a lot of our presentations, they are a branch off of those social issues.
Right.
I don't care what's happening around us. We're called to be believers. We're called to be Christ lovers and Christ, showers of that light, right? And so a lot of times we get hung up in social issues and we forget that I'm still part of another community, a kingdom community. And so a lot of our template is based off of that. As we have our discussions, then we kind of break off into little tribes.
Right. Based on grades or
on topics.
On topics. Okay.
So if this is a topic on whatever, then we'll have a tribe here that gets in a little squadron, and they kind of answer some questions, and they commit to doing something together that week.
Right.
So you got a group here that's going to say, we're going to pray with each other in our group, or this group says that we're going to do an act of love or whatever, or this group says that we're just going to come and see how we can be more involved in our church. But it's all centered around that topic.
They come up with their own call to action.
Their call to action, yeah. So I found out that the tribe thing really works.
Right. Are the tribes based on age, or do they pick their own, or how do you do that?
Well, no, we kind of assign them, because what happens when, I'm hanging with Johnny because that's my boy.
Right.
We want kids
or
to
they hang out with the person that they have a crush on.
Oh, right, absolutely, yeah. So, we kind of try to put them in situations where, it's more effective. Yeah,
sure.
Yeah, I think that the tribe things work really well because I've been able to see, whereas I've been able to say some things, and it didn't go as deep as a tribe, because in their tribe, they're able to break it down and discuss it. Now there's a tribe leader, and then he or she kind of helps them stay on track. But yeah, I really like the tribe thing.
Right.
Yeah, so it's been working pretty cool for us.
So for your Sunday post worship time, you start off talking about a current issue and how the gospel connects with that, and then they go off into their tribes that you pick, and then they break down practically, okay, what is our response and what are we going to do about it now?
Right. I'll tell you an interesting story. The video that you made for us was a part of our What If series.
Yeah.
Basically, so it was set up to what happened if the apocalypse happened and all of the older saints were gone, and it was just a youth group. Well, who's going to play the organ? Who's going to count the money? Who's going to preach? And who's going to do blah, blah, blah. And it was just so amazing to see them come up with their own survival and it was just amazing to see the talents that came out of that. We saw people understanding that I have the ministry of prayer now, or I have the ministry to, helps ministry, or I'm attracted to, counting and organizational. And they were able to see where their giftings and callings were just from that little, that what if sermon or that what if series. So stuff like that is so impactful.
So that's what you do Sundays. What do you do anything else throughout the week?
Yeah, I was just going to say, that's our worship is on every Sunday. That's what it looks like. On Fifth Sunday, we do an all out thing. So Fifth Sundays is just a huge day. High school check-in. We've done Block University. So the name of our youth group is called Block 91.
Okay.
So here's what that means.
Yeah, what's the name?
So
for it?
we're on the 91st block of Ashland.
Okay.
And so Block 91 means building lives on Christ and the kingdom. And we're doing that on the 91st Street of Ashland. So that's what it means.
That's
so
cool.
we have our Block 91 services here, kids from all over the high schools and grammar schools that we're in. We're in over 5 high schools now. I'm 5 grammar schools, elementary schools. And we bus them in, and they can either wear their school shirt or something with their school color on it, and they cheer and they chant, and whichever school is the loudest, we normally do something in terms of a pizza party at that school or some type of effort to help us get deeper and wider in that school.
Right. They let you in?
Yeah, they let us in, which is really unique.
Yeah.
Really, I'll talk to you about that later if there's an opportunity. But they let us in there, and so that's Fifth Sunday. It's all ran by the youth, the praise team or the singers, the dancers. We got a little puppet. Her name is Gabby. She's totally awesome. You guys got to meet Gabby one day. Very opinionated. We just do a whole host of different things that's just right down their lane.
Right.
And they're pretty much running it the whole
That's
day.
elementary aged kids, but then your high school's helping run it and do it? Okay.
Yeah, so we have some youth leaders that are in the high school, elementary age that are kind of help running. So it's from all the way up from 3 to 11, all the way up from.
So you do that any month as a Fifth Sunday. You'll do that
any Fifth Sunday.
Cool. And then so your main youth experience is the Sunday morning post worship thing.
Right. Now we were doing a Friday night thing. We did a pilot last year, which really went really, really well. Yeah. We're beginning that again in March as every Friday night thing. It was huge. We saw some amazing time at the altar here on Friday night. So it was just trying to give us more of a lane, because we were finding out that our Sunday morning youth time, we needed more because the demand, they wanted more. So we were trying to give them more opportunities.
And so you're wanting to open the space up to just teenagers on Friday nights.
Teenagers and
And you in this context, you think it would work, just because I know some youth ministries, they do most do Wednesday nights. And then some, they would never do a Friday night because no kid's gonna want to come to church on a Friday night. They'd rather do something
Friday
else.
nights. We had that concern, but what we found here in urban city Chicago is just not enough opportunities. Right. And so kids get into trouble. And so
so it's more of let's give them an alternative.
Here's your alternative. You know, and I think partnering with the schools help us to do that. And so it's been working. Yeah.
How have you? Tell us about partnership with the schools. How have you been able to affect your community by cooperating with the schools? How's that been?
It's one of those things that it's a God door. Yeah. I call it a God door. It just was open up. You normally do these outreaches and you reach out to a community and they don't reach back, right? This situation, we reached out to a community and the principals were like, hey, come now. Right. And so we just started. Obviously, you can't go into a school with your Bible. Sure. John 3.
We want to preach a sermon in the cafeteria. Is that okay?
Yeah. So, no, we just came in with 3 basic common core principles. And I think it was live, love, excel. Okay. Just 3 topics. Live, we want you to survive. We want you to respect yourself. We want you to love. We want you to learn how to treat your neighbor. Just basic things. Excel, we want you to go far in the marketplace, do your best, be a good citizen. We want you to excel, live, love, excel. So that was the school track. But when they came to church, live, love, excel was more of the spiritual side of it. So they were hearing the natural side at the school, those natural elements. Yeah. But
those universal elements. Yeah.
Right. But when you come here, you're hearing what Jesus has to say about living. You're learning what Jesus has to say about loving and how to excel, and so that's what happened. And then I think really overall, things were getting so rough over in Inglewood that the nation began to pray. Yeah. The nation began to pray, and prayer is powerful. And as a result, what we were seeing, I believe, in my heart, was just some of those prayer efforts and God honors prayer.
Yeah.
And so we were able to partner with principals and find out what some of their issues were, needs were, and just try to come alongside in some small ways and offer support. And then it just kind of blew over into this, what we're doing now.
Yeah. So do you do a small group at the school or an after school club, or what does, okay, so you're talking to the kids about that, but like in what kind of setting?
Yeah. One year, it was so great. We had the principal had given us a small classroom.
Mm-hmm.
It was a vacant room.
Yeah.
I think it was like room 107 or something. And we asked for the rough and tough kids. We asked for those ones that you mentioned earlier. Those are the ones we wanted. Yep. And so we
bring them.
Yeah. And so part of their staying in school or not getting kicked out of school was they had to come and hang out with us. So it was me and one other guy, and we would go and just do these life skills.
And this would be during the school day?
During a lunch period, or during some type of reset time that they had to do to kind of stay in good graces with the school. Mm-hmm. They had to come and see us. So we did different things and just talked to them about career. We had a program called Tied to Success where we teach guys how to tie a tie and things of that nature, just to kind of say, hey. And then off campus, we would invite them to different events that we were having at church and kind of serve
during
sideways.
that time, right?
Well, after school hours, obviously, and then kind of invite them into our church and serve sideways that way.
Wow. So your main gateway into schools was this life skills class that you do for the rough and tough kids. Yeah. And then by that relationship, you're able to invite them to church here.
Absolutely. Obviously, serving at the lunch cafeteria, passing out food, being at the school dance. It's something about when a kid sees you in their environment and then sees you in your environment. There's that consistency thing again. Yep. I'm not only seeing you at my dance, but you're inviting me to this church, and I'm seeing you at this church, and that's changing something away about the way they think. Yeah.
It makes you, because then they're like, oh yeah, I know this guy. Like he's my friend. He's not just some random adult that's wants me to go to his church,
and hang out, some weirdo.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
So you've been able to find some success in this part of, in your context, by just showing up to the school and be like, what do you need?
Yeah.
And so did they suggest the idea of the life skills class, or did you offer that to them? Or?
Well, once you find out the needs, you do a needs assessment. Your first meeting with the principal is just all about hearing their heart.
Yep.
You're not coming in the door
like,
saying,
what are you dealing with?
Yeah, what are you dealing with? And we've even offered to go and knock on doors and say, hey, the principal has been trying to get this letter to you, so your kid can do whatever. And it was a breakdown in communication. Yeah. So we took it and said, hey, we'll knock on the door, give us a list of 10 homes or whatever, and we'll take the letter. And so it's whatever you can find to do.
Right. It's like, I know where they live. I know this person. I'll give them the letter.
Right. And so you're meeting parents, and but whatever your hands can find to do, you just try to do it.
Wow.
With a spirit of excellence.
That's really cool, and that's cool that you have that attitude about reaching your community. You show up to the school and be like, you're part of the public school system. I'm part of a Assemblies of God youth ministry, but we both have a similar heart of wanting the best for our teenagers. What can we do to benefit each other?
Absolutely.
To both make this world a better place for everyone.
And that's how it works, man. That's definitely how it works. Yep.
That's awesome. So for youth pastors who they're no longer in their 20s, they're getting married, having kids, and their kids are getting to the age where their own kids are getting to the youth ministry now. They've been doing it for a while. How do you find that you stay relevant? Because something that I've heard youth pastors say is, once they hit 30 or mid 30s, they're like, oh, I'm too old for this.
Yeah.
I'm not cool anymore. But that doesn't seem to be a problem with you. You don't seem to worry about that at all.
Well, I'm definitely not trying to dress in the latest and greatest. That's a no-no. I'm not going to the school with my hat all to the left. Yo,
With your flat bill.
Yeah, I'm not doing any of that,
Leaving the tags on.
Absolutely, man. That is totally, I'm outside of myself at that point. No, man, I think it's just having that heart and that grace. Mm-hmm. I do know and understand that there's a grace and a time that's on your life for certain periods, right? I think I'm actually coming to the end of a certain period in my life for this juncture. Yeah. There's a huge transition that my wife and I were making, and so you adjust as those changes come. Mm-hmm. But just always trying to be young at heart, understanding to a child, letting the child understand that, hey, I've been there, man. Call me uncle, whatever you want to call me. But I know exactly where you are. I'm not judging you. I'm not trying to make you feel bad. I'm just trying to let you know that you can make it. You're not being your best self. And taking that position a lot of times has kind of helped me to really connect with kids. Hey, our stories my story is not that different from yours. Mm-hmm. I've been there, man. I know what it's like, bro. And really talking to them right on the surface, I think, and underneath the surface, I think kind of helps keep that young at heart thing, going. Yeah, that's what so I'm not, wearing too many ripped jeans and that kind of stuff, man. I'm not doing a lot of stuff. It's just that I'm walking in that grace, I feel, for this season. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it's less about trying to listen to the latest music or keep up with whatever's the latest fad.
Dude, I don't know any of the songs they
right.
sing. I'm just.
But you're still able to connect with them because you're a consistent, loving, wise presence in their lives.
Absolutely.
And they respect that.
That's what I try to be.
You don't have to be cool. You just have to be there.
Mm-hmm. That's what I'm trying to do, bro.
Yeah.
And that's all I really know how to do. I would look really silly, y'all, to see me. Yo. I mean, I would really look terrible. I don't do that. I don't do that.
Trying to talk like a teenager and look like one. It'd be funny to see you like that, though.
Yeah, I think one year at camp, I'm gonna just
just one day,
be 90s Keith.
Oh, dude, every day at camp, you could be like, a teenager from different eras.
Era of your life. Hey, we gotta go with that.
Yeah, we could. You could do 90s teenager and then 2000s and then this decade that we're in.
I'm sorry to say this though, in the 90s we had the best music. I don't know, who did you guys have?
I mean, I was born in 93, so I'm a 90s.
Okay.
I'm a 90s baby, but I was a 90s baby, but I also grew up in a pastor's home, so a lot of the shows and music I wasn't allowed. I didn't discover until basically now. So
okay.
But I mean, I wasn't a teenager during the 90s.
Okay.
How old were you in the 90s?
Yeah, so I was like 16, 17.
16. Okay, so man, I would have loved to have been that age in the 90s. That way you can actually know and like just surround yourself in the culture that was then, right. I was just a little kid during that decade, but you were able to find all the music and the shows.
Yeah, man, I was let me tell you, man, I came to church and I had the church face, but man, I knew all the rap, everything, man. The 90s, we had the best music. I'm sorry. And so I totally lost my mind with some of this music. It was just so good. Mm-hmm. I don't know what they're listening to now, Zach. I couldn't even.
And you don't care.
I really don't even care. Yeah.
Because you don't need to.
Nah. God has done a change in my life, man. And I got a new song I'm singing.
Yep.
It's pretty dope.
And what song is that?
I don't know. I think it goes like this. I'm no longer a slave to fear, but I am a child of God. That's my jam right now. Because that's really who I am, bro. Right. That's who I am.
That song tells your story.
Tells my story. Yeah. Yep.
How did you come to know Christ?
Yeah.
If you don't mind me asking.
So once again, I was that kid that grew up. My mom was the main praise and worship leader. We grew up with a white pastor here on the Southside of Chicago. Get that? And he was just preaching to us about the gospel, and we went through a lot of different things, and I rebelled, and college years. I think I was living in It's kind of sensitive for me, but I was living in the backseat of a car at Jackson State University. Just had kind of got away from those values. And I knew what was right, but I had seen so much of it all my life. I just wanted to have some experiences of my own, you know. I want to know it my way, you know. Okay, Mom and Dad, I know what you're saying, and I see you guys crying and worshiping the Lord, and it looks cool, but I just want to do this thing my own way, you know. So I stepped away. I left home wrong, you know. I left home the wrong way, went to college the wrong way, and campus life just ate me up. You know, there's the drugs, there's the alcohol, and I had a few people in town that wanted to exploit my gift. I could sing pretty good, you know, at least that's what they told me. And, you know, before you know it, man, I was off the college campus, singing in a lot of nightclubs and, man, smoke-filled rooms. And I went to a mall one day, and my friends and we had just finished, you know, doing drugs and getting high, whatever you want to say.
Yeah.
We went to a mall, and we always walked in packs. Some kind of way, I got separated from my group. I don't know how this happened. It was the Lord's doing.
Yeah. And maybe you got distracted.
I got distracted or something. And next thing you know, my group, it was 6 of us, and I don't know where the rest of the guys went.
Yeah.
And they just like disappeared. And there was this white guy who just kept looking at me like I was standing in one area. I had decided if I just stay here, I'll reconnect with the group. So I stood there, but there was this one white guy that just kept looking at me from across the mall. And so I'm thinking, okay, yeah, bro, come try me if you want to. You know, I'm going to show you about these hands.
Yeah.
So
you thought he was coming up on you?
Yeah, I didn't know what the guy was thinking. So, you know, he came and approached me, and he began to tell me my story. I never seen this guy in my life. He began to tell me everything about my life. He told me that I grew up in a home that knew the Lord. I grew up in a saved home. I grew up in a Christian home. He began to tell me that I was off course and in my college years. He began to tell me, just like an open book, he read my life to me.
Yeah.
And he prayed for me in that mall in Jackson, Mississippi. It was called the Metro City Mall. I'll never forget that. And he prayed for me, and I said yes to Jesus in that mall, but it was a different kind of yes. And I had said yes a lot of times at church here,
Sure.
but this yes was like, Lord, yes. And that yes has followed me to this day. So I'm standing in the mall, I'm praying with this white guy. He's actually holding my hand at this point, and he's praying for me, and I'm recommitting my life to the Lord. And I believe that the Lord separated me from that group. Sorry about that.
We're in Chicago.
Yeah. Separated me from my homies just long enough to have that seed of the gospel planted in my life. Man, I am a product of the gospel, bro.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I know what the gospel can do.
Yeah.
He didn't tell me a lot of opinions. He didn't give me a lot of what he thought. He gave me my life, and then he gave me scripture to show me what God wanted to do with my life. That's what we got to give this generation.
Wow.
We got to let them know, I know where you are. I've been there. May not felt everything, but I've been there, and I know it's painful. But here's what the gospel has to say about your situation. If we can successfully do that, man, what revival we'll see.
Yeah.
That's my story, bro.
That's your story.
I'm sticking to it.
And then from there, you just started following Christ, and then which eventually led you to
came back to Chicago, and I wrote a note to my mom and said, hey, I want to come home. I realized I left wrong, and there was some reconnecting that I had to do there and reconciliation there, and had to come home, and came back here and answered the call here to serve, and I began to serve under my pastor, Odell. He's an awesome man, love him dearly, and began to serve under him, and he began to groom me and talk to me about life and kind of help me with some of that man stuff. You know, my father didn't really know him. I didn't meet my dad till I was like 15 or 16.
Wow.
So having that male figure, that was a no-go. But Bishop Townsend began to kind of pour into me and show me some principles to help me get to the next level. Yeah.
Sweet.
I'm here, man.
Yep. Oh, and I'm happy you're here. Thank
Praise
you
God.
for talking with me. We're gonna wrap this up in a little bit. I just want to ask you just a couple final questions.
Okay.
For one, I just wanted to say thank you for hanging out with me today and
Thanks, Zach.
talking to everyone about youth ministry and life. What are 3 things that every pastor could do, no matter what context they're in, to just simply do what they do better? You know, everyone seems to always be trying the latest thing, or, you know, trying to hear what this person has to say, or, you know, what are 3 takeaways that you want to give to everyone who's listening, regardless of whatever their context is or what they're doing?
Yeah, I think you said something huge. I think that the first thing that pastors or ministers can do, however you may serve, is realize that the place that you are or the thing that you're doing, God has already designed a specific thing for that place. And try your darndest to walk out what that goal is, or what the heart of what God said about that ministry. Try to tap into it. I think a lot of times we lose who we are is because we're neglecting our own spiritual personality for whatever part of the earth that we're planning in. We're trying to be something else, and God said, no, I call this church to do A, B, C, and D.
Right.
And if we can line up ourselves that way, I think we'll be more effective.
Yeah.
You know, so that would be the first thing. Try to live out that call of the ministry, or whatever it is that God has called you to do. Walk that out to the fullest. I think that obviously always continue to show love. And I think that's the greatest driving force that we can do is our love walk. You know, how we walk horizontally and how we walk vertically. You know, if I'm not walking vertically with my Lord and Savior, then my horizontal relationships are off kilter. And I think that's key. That's huge to the kingdom of God. And I think the second thing is, I'm just going to go back to that commitment thing, you know, being committed to whatever you do. I think a lot of times we start and we stop, you know, we start and we stop. And that's just because sometimes we don't see the results that we think that we should be seeing.
Yeah.
But behind the scene to everything that we do, there's spiritual things that are put in place that we can't see.
Right.
There's spiritual ripple effects that we don't see that are going on that are affecting people. And I think if we can get a sense of what we don't see happening and the change that we don't see happening, I think that we'll be effective.
Wow. And I think that's huge, especially to people my age. I think with people my age, you know, I'm 25, we're to a degree afraid of commitment.
Yeah.
And I think it's a couple things. One, we have so many choices.
Yeah.
We have so many choices when it comes to places to live, things to do for a career, and people to marry. And so those 3 things, since we have so many choices, we have a hard time picking one. And we also have so many choices, and we grew up under a generation that oftentimes hated the choice that they picked. They were the fatherless generation because they were unsatisfied with their marriages,
right,
or unsatisfied with their jobs. And so I think those 2 things together, where I have a hard time settling down. And so once a youth pastor or someone who's new into ministry finds a place, and then what I've heard different stats, but, you know, one of the stats I've heard for youth pastor turnover rates, like less than 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And to really make a difference in an
It's
area,
hard.
you have to be in there for the long haul.
Mm-hmm.
You know, whether that's 5 years or whatever, and like see it through.
Yeah.
Because
you got to try to see it through. You know, it's difficult. It can be difficult to do, but God can help us do it.
Right.
He can help us do it.
To give you that endurance and perseverance.
Yeah, endurance.
That's perfect. Well, I think that's a great note to end on. Thank you so much for your time, Pastor Keith.
No problem, Zach. Thank you for coming to Shy City.
Yep.
You know what? There was a question that you sent me that I wanted to to add,
Yeah.
if that's okay with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
The question that and this is one I meditated on.
Okay.
It struck me hard. Let me just say, some of the material that you put out, man, is top flight. It always hits me in a way that kind of causes me to think differently about things. One of the questions that you asked me in the email is, what would older Keith have to say to younger Keith?
Yeah.
And I've never been asked that question.
Yeah.
But
so I'm 25. What would what would you now say to 25-year-old Keith?
Yeah, I would definitely say to that guy, I would tap him on the shoulder and say, hey, buddy, stay the course. Everything that has happened in your life has been God ordained. It's been for another stage. I would encourage him that your wife is going to be beautiful. You're going to marry a wonderful wife. You're going to have 4 wonderful children. And the road that God is planning you on is a road for success. I would encourage him in that regard and let him know, man, hey, finish strong. Maybe rocky now, maybe lonely, maybe difficult to find that identity, but you're on the right track. I would keep beckoning him. Come on, buddy. Come on.
Everything's going to be okay.
Yeah, it's going to be good. You're going to be good. You're going to be awesome.
Keep doing what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, keep doing what you're supposed to do. Yeah. Zach, I'm so thrilled, man, that you came to Chicago.
Me too.
To spend these few short hours with us. Many blessings to you and what you're doing through the district. I see the material. It is awesome.
Thank you.
And, man, you are a change agent.
Appreciate that. I appreciate your encouragement. We're good.
All right, man.
That's a show.
All right.
Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of the Team Illinois podcast. I hope this conversation with Pastor Keith Brown really benefited you. Whatever insights that you gained from it, I would love to hear what mattered most to you. So shoot me a message, leave us a comment, let me know what you think. If you're watching this on YouTube, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you're listening to this on a podcasting app, be sure to subscribe on there as well. And if there's any leaders that you think that we should highlight on this show, let me know. I would love to hear your suggestions. That's all that we have for you today. Thank you so much for watching or listening. We'll see you next time.